just a nodding through as a note. Could you just clarify that for me, please, Chair?
Okay, so this is in with the pay scale that's been approved already prior to the meeting. Is that the question? Sorry.
It says in item 3, it needs to be approved by this committee.
If I just provide a bit of clarification, the pay award is negotiated at a national level, as the officers have stated. The Employment Committee have the responsibility to approve the pay award. As the pay award was negotiated and agreed at a national level between committees, the Chief Executive implements the pay award through his delegated powers in consultation with the chairman of the committee and the two spokes. So Mr O'Shea approved and Mr Linda Broadley and Joel Mear, as well as Helen Butler as the chair. So the Constitution allows for that to take place.
So it has been approved prior by this committee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. That answers your question. Yeah, okay. Because otherwise we'd be holding that back, basically. Okay, where were we? So we have approved that. Okay, so we are also asked to note non-mandatory discretion under LGPS regulations contained with Appendix 3 of the report and note Leicestershire County Council's operational approach. Does everyone agree? Thank you. Okay, so item 10 on our agenda today is the workforce report for 2025 to 26, quarter 1 update. This is on pages 41 to 54. Andrew Stewart, Head of People Services, will present this item. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll take the paper as read, but I'm going to take through individual slides. I didn't know, Damien, if you're able to bring them up, because there was some slight issues with some of the... I'm assuming... Oh, right, okay, no worries. Right, so I'll refer to the slide numbers so that you've got, but there are some slides that haven't appeared correctly within the PDF pack, and I'll draw your attention to them as we get to those slides. So slide 44 talks about the headcount and full-time equivalent. Full-time equivalent relates to working 37 hours, as that is determined as full-time within the council work. What you can see within our current headcount is that it has reduced since this time last year, and as well as the FTE has reduced as part of that, and that it seems to be a trend of both are reducing. What we can see is that corporate resources has seen a reduction due to loss of school kitchen staff transferring to new suppliers under 2P arrangements, which is transfer of undertaken protection of employment, just so you know what 2P stands for. The increase in children and family services relates to efforts to convert agency social workers to permanent positions, given new regulations that have come into place that require 3 years worth of local authority employment, direct employment, and the fact that we're capping agency rates. So this relates to a conversion of agency work into substantive work as part of that to reduce our overall agency spend for children's social workers. Moving into absence, we have seen a decline, improvement over the last year, but we have seen that rates have started to rise. We do anticipate some fluctuations in the absence due to seasonal arrangements, but we are slightly concerned about this, and we need to understand the negative trend because are employees actually less healthy, and what could we be doing to manage absence more effectively? We have seen later on in slide 9, we have seen an increase in those that are being actively managed under capability performance, capability relating to attendance, which manages the absence process. And we also want to note that nationally, the Chartered Institute for Personal Development, which is the professional body for HR professionals, is actually seeing that UK sickness has rose to 9.4 days, and this is the highest it's been in a decade, and it's a 62% increase since 2019. So what I'm reporting to the committee is that the absence position could be a lot worse had we not put in place interventions and improved performance within the last 12 months as part of it. Moving on to slide 47. This looks at the specific detail within the departments to show you that we interrogated at a departmental level. We then have this broken down even further so we can interrogate this down to the nth degree based on individual sickness and absence to give you some assurance that we're trying to spot absence trends and actively manage that within departments. We often see that absence is higher in areas that have frontline staff where they're actively out in the community or providing care within care settings. So it does depend on the nature of the work a little bit as to whether the absence rate is slightly higher or lower. And then moving on to slide 48 to then look at the absence reasons. Stress, depression and mental health still appears to be our highest long-term reason for absence, in that we are reporting at 27.55% and that we are looking at this departmentally because we can see where each department is reporting higher stress or lower stress within those departments. Our shortest short-term sickness absence appears to be a combination of COVID-19 and cough, cold, flu reported as a reason. Although when you'd break that down into departments, gastroenteritis does a feature into some departments being higher. So it does seem to be that short-term is where they've got infectious disease, some sort of infection that creates the short-term absence. And just to report, non-disclosed is reported as where you're not, it will always be a reason within there because it's where you either don't know at the time of the absence being reporting the reason for it, or because your medical record is confidential, that could require that we can't actually disclose that on the record. So for cancer, say for instance, where people are looking at payroll records, they want it to be made confidential. That's some of the reasons why it is not disclosed. I was asked to look a little bit further into the wellbeing support, so this builds upon the work that was reported earlier in the health and safety. I think this is the slide that I mentioned is a little bit hard to read within the pack. What I've done is taken a screenshot of our intranet site in terms of the support for managers, the support for staff, and a health, safety, lifestyle, and work-related support in terms of the categories. It's also to say that we have these pathway counselling that's able to be accessed. We have training for individuals and managers, and we also offer that mental health first aid support training to individuals and managers to try and signpost people to the right support at the right time. Moving on to slide 50, this talks about the additional support where people are in, I think we talked about trauma earlier, so it's where there's been an incident of violence and aggression, accidents and injuries, emotional distress, bereavement, and then any other elements like damage to property, threats or terrorist activity and fraud and bribery. So it's really clear. This is on the front page of our intranet, so it's readily accessible to all staff so that they can just click a button to find out where to get the support that they need. I think it's going back to Colin's point in the health and safety report that I put over 80, it's 85% of our workforce access the counselling provision when they are in work. So we are doing what we can to sustain people within employment related to absence. And moving on to, this was a new requirement that we discussed as part of the last employment committee about bringing in some of the formal cases to give an understanding of the culture of how many things are being taken formally, disciplined, grievances as part of that piece of work. We are reporting low numbers of formal grievance and disciplinary, and as you can see, we're proactively managing performance and attendance, especially within attendance, we're averaging on 440 people in a process which represents about 88% of the workforce that we're actively managing in some sort of performance process. Just to note for suspensions, I've drawn out that suspensions are the majority of these relate to substance misuse and non-negative testing. This is a preventative, proactive approach as part of our policy and procedure to proactively test people within using in safety critical roles or driving. So we're doing a form of testing to make sure that we are meeting our duty. And then moving on to 52, it's looking at the APR about appraisal rate, what annual performance reviews to making sure that they've been undertaken. We have undertaken quite a bit of work in this regard and know that our issues relate to the way it's recorded on the system, because we do see a lot more people having these. It's just the way it's recorded. We're finding that we need to work on our system as how to improve that provision going forward. And then in terms of the last two slides is related to the activity that we've been undertaking since we last reported. We've been reviewing the Smarter Working policy. We've implemented the pay award already discussed, and we're reviewing the Employment Rights Bill to ensure that we're taking reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment within the workplace. And then finally, it's a bit of an update in terms of the Chief Executive recruitment that's being undertaken at the moment. So as at the time that we were reporting, appointment panel had been determined. We were advertising to a permanent role. We're working with a company called Starfish to support the executive search and selection. The advert has just gone live today in the MJ. The closing date will be on the 19th of October, with final interviews on the 17th of November and full council approval on the 5th of December. So I'll just walk through that. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Have we got any questions? Oh gosh, so Mr. Cook, Mr. Charlesworth and Mrs. Taylor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to hear yourself and the gentleman at the end there, what you're doing internally and externally. I wish I'd have come to a place like this and spent my youth working here. You seem to be doing everything that's called upon, above and beyond, in my opinion. Do you have such things, two questions. Do you have such thing as back to work interviews? When I worked for a company and I abused the sick or abused the good things that you got within the company, you had back to work. That was quite effective because I didn't want to sit in front of a supervisor and be examined why you was off. You know, I'm not trying to say you're making it easy for them. You're doing a fantastic job. And the crucial question I'd like an answer to is, how many positions have been created in the last 3 years, and how many departments, if that's doable, please?
So how many positions have been created against how many departments? I'll need to go away and actually look at the data to find that out for you. In terms of the first question around, we do require return to work interviews, and we do ask that managers undertake training to understand what types of questions to make sure that they are robust conversations. And previously we have invited the Employment Committee to be trained on that if they wanted to see what that looks like and feels like, because they are we ask for some quite challenging conversations as part of that.
Can I just come in at that point? Is their manager absent at that point? Is he there when you do that interview, or is it just yourself in HR?
No, it should be the manager that undertakes that return to work interview, and there is a requirement as part of that. When you report any absence, there's a requirement to make sure that you've done a return to work interview against every absence that someone's undertaken.
And that's documented?
That is required to be documented as part of their Oracle record.
Okay. Can I ask another question, Chair? I'm really sorry. It's just a strong point. So
I think
if that continues and there's a pattern of concern, what would be the next stage you would address with?
So that triggers the absence managing attendance policy, and that in terms of reporting on the slides, those are the figures that we are reporting within. It is slide 51, open HR cases related to attendance. So that HR would formally get involved when it has triggered some sort of that triggered the absences within months. So the absence triggers, Caroline, you'll have to remind me about the specifics in terms of that. I think it's, is it 28 days within a calendar year that they have? And it's 4 absences that triggers the first stage of the absence? Just checking my knowledge here.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, we could provide a copy of the absence management policy, attendance management policy, but it's long-term sickness absence or a pattern of 3 periods of absence in a set period.
Thank you. Mr. Charlesworth.
Yeah, it's just going back to, there were some incidents here a little while ago about hate incidents, which we were all notified about. Has that largely gone away, and did that have any impact on employees' absence?
We weren't able to directly correlate absence to those incidences directly, so can't answer that question specifically. We have not received any other. I'd need to talk specific, maybe out of the context of the Public Employment Committee, to talk about details of cases specifically, because I don't want to identify any, if the individuals are concerned, kind of thing. But we've not received anything recently within the last 12 months, as far as I understand.
Thank you. Mrs. Taylor, please.
Thank you. Just want to go back to the 25-26 absence slide that you brought there. Obviously, in 2020, the whole world changed and we adopted the hybrid working in a more flexible approach, and obviously sickness is coming down now. There was a concern about staff working at home when they were unwell and not fit for work, and we tried to address that. Do we think there's still an issue of people continuing to work because they're working at home when they're unwell and shouldn't really be working? Have we got any data around that?
We haven't got any data at this point in time, because we've tried to look and answer some of those questions, and that's partly why we want to undertake a bit more of an in-depth analysis against some of, are people actually really ill, or is it something else culturally that we need to be addressing from that point of view? So, Lucy, did you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it works both ways to a certain extent. So I think we've benefited, in some cases where people are feeling poorly. We all know what it's like sometimes. If you think you've got to get yourself dressed, sorted, do you know what I mean, drag yourself out looking, remotely presentable to a certain extent, and go in office and share all your germs with everybody, isn't it, to a certain extent? Whereas actually, to a certain extent, depending on what your diary is that day, you may be able to crack on with some work, couldn't you? So actually, to a certain extent, we think we've benefited sometimes where staff might say, I'm not feeling absolutely 100%, but actually I can't, I can still function. So, and equally where people, have had injuries and operations and all sorts of things, the working at home's worked really well, hasn't it? Because they haven't had to come into the office. So I think we've benefited in one respect, but then equally, to a certain extent, you're right. Is there hidden absence, if you like, to a certain extent, because we're not seeing people as often, and that's as Andrew said, why we're seeing this trend nationally to a certain extent. That's the intelligence we're getting through our kind of networks, and so we are going to be probably suggesting to the committee in December that we want to do a bit of a deeper dive as to the questions, trying to get to are we just getting unhealthier? We are an ageing workforce, aren't we? There's all these sorts of dynamics that are kind of coming out. Yeah.
Thank you. Have we got any more questions? Oh, Mr. Innes, please. Thank you.
Just on the absence rates, just a quick calculation between 1 in 12 and 1 in 10 of our employees are not working today. I just find that incredible. If we were in a private business, we'd go out of business with that sort of rate. I get that there's national statistics that say that public sector is there's higher rates, etc. But surely there's more we can do on this. There has to be more. There's either a cultural or some other issues involved here where we're not just getting to the root cause of what's causing people to be absent. As I say, if we were running a business, we'd be bust by now on that sort of rate.
Yeah, I mean, with the comparison with the private sector, then absence rates in the public sector are always higher to a certain extent. Hopefully, you know, the chart shows that since 2017, our rates, you know, per FTE have come down. So they were at 9.72. We had got them down by 1 FTE. But there is almost, you know, I'm not saying there is more that we can necessarily always direct do, but we need to understand why. Yeah, and that's the piece of work I think that we want to try and do is understand, you know, when you look at those causes, so why might there be more stress and mental health issues amongst our staff within the public sector? Yeah, and the reasons for that. But the data is the data. The data is the data. Yeah, in terms of factual. So yeah, that's what we have to work with. Hopefully, we've been able to demonstrate just by the numbers of the staff that, you know, we do take through our policies. You know, people do end up being dismissed. Yeah, for non-attendance. You know, regrettably, we try and give everybody all the support, but ultimately, you've got a contractual obligation to attend work, and sometimes we do have to end the employment relationship. Yeah.
Is it possible to have the figures of dismissals due to absence over the last, say, 5 years, just to see what that trend is?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's a different question.
Sorry, I just go to Mrs. Taylor and then we'll come back to Mr. Mills.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to sort of put some context around this because I get a lot of sense of comparing us to a private business, and I'm not talking about the civil service across the country. I'm talking about this local authority, and we just need to be careful about how we compare because we're not comparing like for like. We have a lot of our staff dealing with adult social care and children's social care, and we just be really careful about that sort of work. Is very traumatic for a lot of our staff, the day-to-day work of that. So just comparing us to, you know, a factory packing boxes is not quite the same. So I think we just need to be really careful about those comparisons that we make. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your point, and I think, yeah, that's a really good point to raise, and I think that's why it's good that we have all the comparisons so we can see what's going on, especially like the breakdown of the departments, that kind of stuff. But thank you very much. So, sorry, your question, Mr. Innes.
Yeah, just one more on the FTEs. I think I heard you say that the FTEs have gone up slightly due to agency staff coming onto the books. Do we have a record or a measure of full-time equivalent, including agency staff? So what's the, because that would be a truer figure for me to see what the true employment rate is.
We find that quite a challenging figure to come up with. We're looking at overall spend is probably what we can look to provide, but it's quite difficult to measure headcount, to get agency headcount versus substantive employed headcount, but we can definitely provide. I can get the financial figures for you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, so we are asked to note the content of the Workforce Q1 report for 2025-26. Does everyone agree, please? Thank you. Okay, so item 11 is a report on organisational change policy and procedure, action plans. This is on pages 55 to 60 of your agenda packs. Damien Buckley, Democratic Services Officer, will present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a standing item that comes to the committee, and it just sets out an update of the current action plans, which contain provision for compulsory redundancy and details of their progress on implementation. And there are two appendices, one with ongoing action plans and one with ones that have been completed. And members are just asked to note the report and the content of the appendices. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on that one, please? Okay, so we are asked to note the update provided on the current action plans, which contain provision for compulsory redundancy and details of progress in their implementation. Does everyone agree? Thank you. Okay, so as mentioned at the start of the meeting, there are no urgent items. So the date of the next meeting of the committee is scheduled to be held on the 4th of December 2025. So it's at this point we have the exclusion of the press and public. So the next item to be considered is private. I therefore move that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 4 and 10 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Is that agreed? Thank you.